Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later in the program, Obamacare comes to Colorado. What does it mean to you? But first, our PC chairman, our PC chairman, politically correct chairman of the PUC, is now going to Washington to do what he did to Colorado to the whole damn nation. To explain what the hell I mean is Amy Oliver Cooke.
We only have 13 minutes to explain what you
Only 13 minutes.
That could be tough.
All right, you run our Energy Policy Center, among many, many other things. Years ago, you sent up a flare about a guy named Ron Binz, who was then the chairman of the very powerful Public Utilities Commission. I tell you what, let's go forward in time. The Wall Street Journal did this huge editorial against Ron Binz because he's being nominated for this incredible post. What is the post? And then let's work backwards.
He has been nominated to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So Ron Binz, former chair of the Colorado Public Utilities Commission. He was also former head of the OCC and did a couple of other things, architect of Amendment 30, Office of Consumer Counsel.
Got it.
He has been nominated to chair the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. He will be in charge at that agency of the nation's transmission distribution of electricity. He'll be in charge of the nation's electric grid.
This is a big, big post. I mean, this is if you're into energy, if you're into making sure that electricity goes where it wants and it's being created the way you want, this is a huge but technical post.
It should be just a post that sort of maintains and makes sure that ratepayers can turn on a light switch or the light goes on when they flip a switch. It should be a post that is concerned with the cost of electricity. But I fear under Ron Binz, it will become something much different. And yes, the Wall Street Journal did an enormous top of the fold. It was their Monday lead editorial. Ron Binz's rules for radicals about how he will be, it will essentially be a rogue agency bypassing Congress. Ron Binz sort of running energy as he wants it. A friend of mine put it, Ron Binz will be to energy as Eric Holder is to justice.
Lovely. Now let's go backward in time. Go back a few years. This guy, Ron Binz, who's gone around inside the public sector year after year after year and turns up, how did he become chairman of the Public Utilities Commission, and why is that important? People hear the term PUC, but they have enormous power, and they've changed some things here in Colorado.
Yeah, they have.
Give me the story.
They have. Well, first of all, Ron Binz was the architect of Amendment 37, which was his paper on which Amendment 37 was based, that you could have renewable energy in the state of Colorado at a 10% level mandated in the state constitution. So it is a constitutional amendment.
There's no way out of it.
Nope.
So
Nope.
If every legislator in the state says we need to change this,
you can't get rid of the 10%. We are now at 30%, and that has been done legislatively, but the 10% will can't, unless we overturn the constitutional amendment. But Ron Binz was the architect of that, and essentially his paper said it really wouldn't cost us any more. In fact, it will save you money. And we have found that that is not the case. Now, that was 2004. Once Governor Bill Ritter, who
New
was
Energy
Economy
Governor.
The No Energy Economy Governor. New Energy, sorry. Anyway, when he was elected governor in 2006, he nominated Ron Binz to chair the PUC. Ron Binz subsequently then took over the chairmanship of the Public Utilities Commission. The mission of it changed from being...
Let's talk about it. The PUC here in Colorado has a role in lots of different things. They regulate transportation things like taxis and other stuff.
And trains.
And trains and all that. But for most people, what's important is they regulate the energy industry in Colorado.
Yes.
And for years, their role was very, very clear. The mission of the Public Utilities Commission is to do what on energy?
Affordable, reliable, abundant electricity.
All right,
And
let's see
and
if I got
understand
this.
it's for investor-owned utilities. It was
Right.
not for all utilities. It was for investor-owned, things like Xcel Energy and Black Hills.
Right, so there are a lot of REAs, kind of
Right.
rural electric
Right.
associations. They're not investor-owned. The people who live there all have a...
They're owned by the members.
They're owned by the people, all right. But for those investors, they want, the PUC's job was to make sure we had least cost
Principal, right.
principle that says whatever the least cost is, whatever is abundant and affordable, our job at the PUC is to make sure the people of Colorado aren't getting swindled by these electric monopolies.
And essentially what they're doing is the utilities were guaranteed a rate of return. In exchange, they got regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, who is supposed to, they're supposed to look out for ratepayers. Because the ratepayers, it's a monopoly. I can't go somewhere else and get my electricity. If I'm an Xcel Energy customer, I have nowhere else to go. I can't shop it. There is no competitive bid on electricity. So it was affordable, reliable, and abundant, and that was supposed to encourage public utilities. Right, in that utilities would provide energy that is on demand and that is affordable because consumers have nowhere else to go.
Ron Binz gets to the PUC. What changes in that mission?
Yeah,
and then, this wasn't voted on by the people, it wasn't voted on by the legislature.
All I know is that it changed. The mission statement changed. That's what I can tell you, is that it changed. It became reasonably priced, consistent with the social, environmental, and economic values of Colorado. So reasonably priced energy.
So instead of least cost, is that what we think is reasonable, but it has to be in line with the values.
Right.
What the hell does that mean? That's mushy stuff, and it's music to the ears of companies like Xcel because that means more money for them.
Well, when Xcel, to be fair to Xcel Energy initially opposed Ron Binz's renewable energy mandate because they realized it wasn't going to be cheap, and they realized it doesn't help the stability of the grid. So they opposed it, except for when they realized, oh wait, Ron Binz is now chairman of the PUC, and by the way, if I play ball with Ron Binz, I'm going to be rewarded, and rewarded handsomely, so that shareholders did quite well with Ron Binz as head of the PUC. Ratepayers, on the other hand, not so much.
The Xcel operates in several states, right? How many states are they
they're
in?
Well, I think they've got four separate divisions, and some go over a couple of states. But Minnesota, Wisconsin, Colorado, they have a little, I think they have a little bit of New Mexico, a little bit of Texas.
How do they do in those other states compared to Colorado? For their investors?
Well, first of all, their bond rating went up. Their rating went up significantly, so they did quite well. Their credit rating, I should say, their credit rating went up significantly under Ron Binz and Bill Ritter. They also, for roughly 25% of the customer base of Xcel's customer base, which is what Colorado represents, they got about 50% of their rate of return on their profit came from Colorado, and that was.
I'm not so good on the math. So, Colorado represents about a quarter of all of Xcel's,
maybe a hair more,
of all of Xcel's customers. Yet that quarter of Xcel's customers are bringing in over half the profit.
Roughly, no, not quite half. It's about half. It's right in that 50, sometimes a little more. I think one time it was a little less. I mean, so it's right in there.
So in other words, Colorado has been really good to Xcel under Ron Binz.
But I don't blame Xcel. I mean, as a ratepayer, yes, I get irritated. But this is something that Ron Binz was responsible for. He created an atmosphere by which Xcel Energy could do well because Xcel Energy was willing to play ball with Ron Binz.
What do you mean by play ball?
Ron Binz was a huge fan of wind energy. So long as Xcel provided a certain amount of wind, I mean, that Xcel was willing to do that. So Ron Binz was willing to help them get their rate of return. But their really biggest rate of return came when Ron Binz was negotiating the cost recovery language without Xcel Energy on legislation that then Ron Binz was going to sit in judgment of. So Ron Binz, Xcel Energy, and the governor's office crafted language for Clean Air, Clean Jobs, which is the fuel switching bill from coal to natural gas, which, by the way, Ron Binz now says is a dead technology.
Natural gas.
Yeah, he says it's a dead end technology. So he negotiated the cost recovery language for the very utility he's supposed to be regulating. Now, I went through all of those emails.
In other words, he's going to enforce the laws that he creates.
Right,
nice.
Right. And that Xcel agreed to with these emails, because we've seen the emails. The Mining Association did a core request and got all the emails. I didn't see a ratepayer group in any of the email threads. So while it is, from what I have been told by former PUC commissioners, that don't know if it's illegal, but at best it's unethical.
Why were people keeping an eye on Ron Binz here? You did some interesting work, and you took a look inside of his travel habits.
Yeah.
That caught your eye. Why?
Well, we were working with other groups, several groups were looking at what Ron Binz was doing, because, I mean, he was negotiating cost recovery language for a utility.
Well, give me a definition, by the way, cost recovery language.
In other words, he was guaranteeing a rate of return for Xcel Energy in legislation that then was rammed through, and then he was then sitting in judgment of later on.
Let's call it guaranteed profit. That's what it was.
A 10.5% rate of return.
Whoa, hang on. Whoa. 10.5%.
Yeah.
So Ron Binz arranged for Xcel, since now they're playing ball on wind energy, to have a guaranteed, did you say 10.5%?
Yeah, it's a 10.5% rate of return.
All right, because I know that your investments are doing at 10.5%.
Para should invest in it.
Yeah, Para should invest in it. I put my kid's college fund in it.
Right.
So in this economy, Xcel's getting a guaranteed 10.5%.
Now, do you blame
return.
them for wanting to come to Colorado? I don't
No.
either. As mad as I get at them, no, I don't blame them. So he was involved in negotiating that, and now he is going to be in charge of our national grid.
Remarkable. Talk to me a little bit about some of the corporate connections. He went on a lot of business trips. This guy
he did, and
knew how to travel.
That was the question about core. We had worked with some other groups. We did a core request on the travel documents for the
open records request.
Right, for the 3 public utilities commissioners, and I ended up needing a dolly to get the documents out of the PUC, because it was a huge. I think it may have even been 2 boxes full, but there were so many travel documents there. And as it turns out, that Ron Binz took a trip that was paid for by a company that he also sat in judgment of, that he regulated. An ethics complaint was filed against him. Now, there was no punishment. No punishment was issued, because they said he did not benefit from it, but he was found guilty of an ethics violation, and this is a guy who traveled significantly.
All right. So we've got a guy who's guilty of an ethics violation, guarantees
rates of return,
forces an expensive agenda, and now that he has been gone from Colorado, he's going to the feds. And now the Wall Street Journal, Politico, and others are starting to look. Thank you for opening up their eyes to it, and I hope you pay some attention too. Maybe you ought to let your congressmen and senators know how you feel about it. Amy, thank you. Stay tuned. Let's talk a little Obamacare.